Welcome to the third Hayley-Roxanna Crafts quick cross stitch video, where I share information, hints and tips on one area of cross stitch in a short video. In this video, I will be focusing on holding the fabric whilst cross stitching. There are a number of different ways of holding fabric whilst you're stitching, and you do need to find what works for you. Your personal preference may also change depending on the size of the project that you're working on and the fabric you are using. My personal preference is holding the fabric in hand. This requires no extra materials, so is very good for a beginner who is unsure if they want to pursue cross-stitching as a hobby before they start paying out for extra things that they can use. I use this method as it's simply just how I was taught and what I prefer. So to hold it in my hand, I place the fabric between my index finger and my middle finger, just around where I want to stitch, so just above, and then just below where I'm stitching, I will place my thumb on the front, and on the back, I will place my ring finger, so I'm sort of squeezing the fabric between, like so, and then I can pull my fingers apart just to help keep the fabric taut, to help keep the stitches nice and even, the tension of the stitches. If I'm working on a piece that's a bit nearer to the centre, say, rather than scrunching my fabric up, I will actually just roll it. This is something that my great-great-aunt taught me as she was a cross-stitcher. I will just roll the fabric over like so to get the excess out of the way. And then I can hold it in exactly the same way to continue stitching. I've got my right hand free to stitch. I hold it in my left hand. Depends on whether you're left and right handed. You can do it from the other side. If you are working on a larger project and there is too much excess material on the right for me, then I will use just some large paper clips to hold it in place. So I will just roll in the excess from this side to just the other side of where I am stitching, and then just pop the paper clips on, one at the top and one at the bottom, to hold that in place whilst I'm stitching. You can even get larger paper clips than that, so if you're doing a larger piece you may want to use even larger paper clips. The largest projects that I have ever worked on in hand have been about probably 16 inches square, but I do mostly do smaller projects, so sort of under 12 inches square. If I ever decide to stitch a larger project than probably 16 by 16 inches, then I may need to consider another option for holding my cross stitch. So another option for holding your cross stitch whilst you're stitching is to use a hoop. This is good if you find it hard to keep the tension of your stitching even whilst you're holding your work in your hand. So an embroidery hoop, they can come in a variety of sizes. Most commonly they are 3 to 12 inches. This one is about a 6-inch, I think. And when you're using these, we literally undo the screw at the top, and that just loosens that outer ring so the two parts come apart. Then you place your cross stitch fabric over the bottom hoop. If the whole piece doesn't fit, that's fine if you're just using it for stitching. Just place it over with where you want to stitch roughly in the middle. Place the outer hoop back over the top. Sometimes you might need to just loosen it again just to make it a little bit bigger to do this. Place that over the top, push it down, and then you'd screw it together so that it all stays in place, and that will just hold your work for you. You want to screw it until, they say, like drum tight, so it's like a drum skin, so when you tap it you can sort of hear it, to make it tight enough for stitching. Embroidery hoops can also be used to display your finished cross stitches. If you are using an embroidery hoop on a larger cross stitch, or one that is larger than the hoop, you may need to move the hoop around as you're stitching to be able to stitch in the different areas, but this can lead to the stitches becoming squashed. And although a wash and an iron will probably sort this out once it's finished. If there is a lot of extra material around the outside of the hoop whilst you're stitching, you can get grime guards to cover them, which is like a fabric cover, and it literally just sits over the sort of edge of your work. An alternative to hoops is a plastic snap frame. These are commonly called Q-snaps, although other brands are available. I don't actually own any of these, so I only have this picture of one, but these are square or rectangular frames which you place your fabric over and use the semicircular clamps to hold it in place. You can mix and match the sides of these frames to get different sizes to use. The sides are like pipes, hollow pipes that are joined together with corner pieces. And then when you put the clamps on, you turn them outwards to tighten the fabric. And again, you can get grime guards to hold any excess fabric around the edge whilst you're stitching, just to prevent it from getting mucky or getting tied up in what you're stitching. If working on a larger project than the plastic snap frames, you will have the issue of squashing stitches when moving the frame to work on different sections of your cross stitch. A way around this may be to use a scroll frame. Scroll frames come in a variety of sizes. They have 2 rods that your fabric rolls around and 2 extender bars to create the frame. Your fabric is attached to the rods, which can be done by stapling, stitching, clamping, or using Velcro, depending on the frame you have. You need to ensure your project has extra fabric to allow for this attaching. As you are stitching your project, you just roll the rods to move to different areas of the fabric. And as the fabric is rolled, the stitches aren't squashed. Scroll frames can be heavy to hold, but you can get stands like this Lowry one, although other makes are also available, that you can clamp the frame to. Stands come in a variety of styles, and you can also use the stands to hold hoops and snap frames. You can get stands that sit on a tabletop, or you can get floor standing ones like this. If you are interested in using a stand, do your research first, as they can be quite expensive, so you want to make sure you're going to get something that you'd be happy with. Like I said at the beginning, the method of holding your fabric is a personal preference. There is no right or wrong way, as long as the finished cross stitch looks how you want it to look. If you have any questions about holding your cross stitch fabric, please pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. In next week's quick cross stitch video, I will show you how to separate stranded embroidery thread or floss.